Hello. Hello.
On.
Hello.
Good evening, Gopalakrishnan sir. There is a background noise coming from your area. So could you please check this?
Okay, I will change from here. Is it okay?
It's okay. There is no noise. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Somebody had switched on the TV.
Shankar, good evening. This is Shabiri here.
Good evening, sir. Shankar here. I can see you.
And good evening, everyone else. Shankar, can you please give me confirmation if sir is here? Ajit Shankar sir is here. It's already 6:03.
Yes, sir. Actually, I couldn't see him in the list.
Okay, and Harinder sir just gave me a call
okay, just I will give Harinder sir a call as well because it's time now.
Yeah, Harinder sir will not be able to join right now because his internet is down. So for the time being, I shall keep over. If sir is here, if the resource person is here, then we'll be good to go.
Okay,
Gopalakrishnan Nair sir is here. Sir will be delivering the welcome address. I understand Ashwin Chandran is here, so we shall introduce the speaker. And K.R. Venugopal sir from PES, he must also be here. he will take care of the discussions and question answers. So that is how today's agenda would be going on. If Mr. Shankar sir is here, then I suppose we can probably start.
Okay, sir. I'm just checking the participant list.
Okay. There is an iPhone I see in the participants list without a name. iPhone users here, can you please identify yourself?
Jayarajan Gopalan is using iPhone.
Okay, good evening, sir. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the talk.
Okay,
We
thank
will be starting shortly, sir. And there is also a Galaxy Tab A. I'm not sure who that is. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I request you to please be patient for a couple of minutes more. It seems that the resource person has not joined yet. I will just trying to find out what the issue is. So please do bear with the situation. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Achal.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir. We've been waiting for you for
Okay.
some time. Yeah. So we can start, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the
Yeah,
third.
I'm fine.
Yes.
Let me just ask you.
Yes, sir.
Do I make the speech in English or is it Malayalam?
Of course, Malayalam is as well permissible. You're free to use any language you prefer.
This is announced only in Trivandrum, is it?
It was announced international as well, but I was just browsing through the participants list, and I understand mostly are from Trivandrum, Kerala itself. So I don't think
If somebody texts the message, I may not notice that if I speak in Malayalam, if somebody is objecting, you please let me know. You interrupt and
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. I shall take care of that.
In any case, I will switch between English and Malayalam.
Okay, sir. You're most welcome to.
So I'm ready. I will wait for you to take.
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you very much. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third Inter-Society Weekly Webinar Series. And this is the third talk, and today we have the very renowned Professor Achyut Chandra, the head of the Computational Biology and the Bioinformatics Department at the University of Kerala, to deliver a very exciting talk that we've all been looking forward to on tips for facing physical and mental health issues in the overuse of digital gadgets, especially in this COVID pandemic situation. So today's program schedule is as such. We do have a welcome address, which Dr. K. Gopalakrishnan sir would be delivering. And right after that, the speaker would be introduced by Ashwin Chandran. And then Achyut sir takes over for his talk. And then we'll have a question and answer and a few discussion points. So that we wind up with a vote of thanks. So over to you, Gopalakrishnan sir, to welcome the gathering.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Good evening, friends. I am K.K. Gopalakrishnan Nair, Chairman, Institution of Engineers, India, Kerala State Center. Today, we have got the third talk in the webinar series organized by the... Pardon? Can you hear? Hello.
Yes, sir. You are audible. Please continue.
Yeah, you're audible.
So today we have got the third talk in the webinar series organized by the different professional organizations. The topic for today's talk is tips for facing physical and mental health issues in overuse of digital gadgets. The speaker is Professor Achyut Chandra Nair, who needs no introduction to you all. With great pleasure, I welcome the speaker on behalf of all the organizations and all the friends present here. Also, I welcome all the people assembled here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Over to Ashwin Chandran to please introduce the resource person for the day. Ashwin, are you there?
Hello, Ashwin sir, you are not audible.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Ashwin, there's some audio issues with Ashwin. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Achyut Chandra requires no much of introduction because he is quite very famous in Trivandrum area, of course, across Kerala, because he is a person, as I understand, who is very keen that his students should enjoy learning. So he is not a person who kind of goes ahead with the textbook kind of knowledge and then examination-oriented knowledge. So he's a person who wants everybody to understand and enjoy and have fun with learning. So he is, the way I understand, he is a very ardent follower of open source and free software. He also is, kind of very much interested in Malayalam computing. He has authored quite a few books and quite a lot of international publications to his credit. He currently heads the Computational Biology and Bioinformatics Department at the University of Kerala. Over to you, sir, Achyut Chandra, sir. So you can start your presentation. And sir, I just got a comment that there are some participants who can understand Malayalam.
Yes,
so, probably you can.
that's fine. That's fine. Can this?
over to you, sir.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So, hello to everyone. I'm very glad to speak to a IT community during this lockdown period. Am I audible? Am I well audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. You're slightly feeble, but still you're audible.
Okay, I can come closer. Is that okay now? Is that okay? Is that better?
Yes, sir. This is better. This is better.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I'm very, very glad that I'm able to talk to you during this lockdown period. And when I was asked to speak, I chose to speak on a matter which a person like me is very concerned. It is about health. I would like to tell you that I have been a teacher for 30 plus years, and I've used computers for nearly that much period, or even slightly more than that. But the heavy use of computers, as many of you may also know, it has happened in the last 20 years that people started having a laptop, and then people started having other personal computing devices. But today the picture is very, very clear. Almost everybody has a digital gadget with him or her, and a very great amount of time is spent by people on the device. And this obviously has physical and mental implications on the users. Now, I'm not here to scare you, nor to ask you not to use these devices. That is quite impossible. We cannot think of a world without these devices too. So we are going to continue to use them. But it would be wise to understand some of the concerns, some of the background information, and be aware of some very simple tips which can actually help you to improve your health. I would first of all like to tell you that these issues, mental as well as physical, are associated with every profession. You could say that these are occupational health hazards. I will straight away cite an example. If people are continuously typing on a keyboard, then you tend to get a issue called repetitive strain injury. I will come to it later. But then don't think that it is a problem with computers. It is actually a problem with the occupation. People who work in the field of, for example, this cashew processing, laborers who constantly do the same work. They are doing the same work. Their fingers are going through the same movement. People who also work with, making BDs, the Indian cigarettes, they suffer from the same occupational hazard of repetitive strain injury. So what I'm trying to hint at is, I'm not here to paint IT as a big issue or IT as some new issue. No, occupational hazards have been there everywhere. Coming to think of it, computers have actually reduced some of the typical occupational hazards. Let me tell you an example. Before the desktop publishing was there, in our country, there were a lot of letter presses. So the press used blocks and letter blocks that were made up of lead. And lead poisoning was a very, very serious issue as far as the employees who sent the letters were concerned, because they were using it for a very large, they were exposed to it for a very, very large time. But with desktop publishing, we have actually avoided this, but we have some other problems. That is all. Similarly, look at the photography studio. A lot of chemicals being used inside a photography studio, silver bromide, for example. And people had to remain in a room with the without light, and for the exposure of the films. Lot of chemicals around. But today, I would say, photography has been kind of saved from chemistry and it is now managed by mathematics. For example, there are no negatives anymore. And to improve contrast, you don't use any optical, physical, or chemical technique, but you use a mathematical technique to enhance the contrast. So, what I'm trying to say initially is that please be assured that I'm not here to pin down computers and mobile phones as some gadgets which have made our life terrible. No, they have served, they continue to serve, they will serve in future. But that doesn't mean we need to look at them critically and we need to take some precautionary measures. Let me first talk about the issues which are related to our mind. When you say mental issue, that there is a stigma attached to that. But let me just say issues attached to our thinking and our mind and our behavior, I would say. When I was young, one of the books that was today, many of you might have read Yuval Harari, very famous hot author, who has written these books, Homo Deus, Homo Sapiens, and now 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. All are very excellent books. Yuval Harari of 1970s and 1980s was a person called Alvin Toffler. He wrote two books. One was called The Future Shock, and the other one was called The Third Wave. Some of you may have read. The senior members who are listening to me may have read. And what he professed was, soon human beings would face a particular disease called information overload. I am very amused how he foresaw this so early, but even he would not have imagined that we would be subjected to information overload so ferociously in another 25 years. Friends, we are all suffering from information overload. In fact, if you want to understand it, you have to compare with your life. You have to deconstruct your life and compare it with life when there was no internet, no mobile phones, and no computers. That is very difficult for the young generation to imagine. But for me, it is easy to imagine because I have been through such a world. Many of the senior members here also have been through such a world. So, in today, what we don't realize is that we are continuously defeated by information. We know subconsciously that there is so much information coming to you that there is no way you can manage it. Don't think of the computer first. First, think of the television. 1980s, you had just one channel. You just had one channel, Doordarshan channel, and you had to keep watching it. Whatever program was there, you had to watch it. And there was one day in which, in the afternoon, there was a slot called regional cinema, and you can go and watch the regional cinema. Sometimes it may be of your language, Malayalam or Tamil, but most of the times it will be from some other language. And the life at that point of time was very easy. There was no decision-making problem. You had only one channel to watch. But today, what is waiting for you at home? In my home, my television connection has 1,000 channels, 999 channels. And each of them almost run 24 hours. Sometimes in the night, it may be repeat programs, but the 24 hours it's available. So in one day, in your television, you can watch, theoretically, if it were possible, you can watch 24,000 hours of programs, television programs. But we have only 24 hours. 100 years ago and currently also we have only 24 hours. But you have, earlier you had 24 hours and you had 12 hours of Doordarshan program to watch. Today we have 24 hours again, but we have 24,000 hours of video to watch, which is available on the television, cable television. And look at the information that came to you. A few phone calls, a few letters, a few people whom you will directly meet and chat. But today, in your mobile phone, you might have a dozen to 100 WhatsApp groups. On your email, you may receive about 100 emails. There might be SMS, there might be phone calls, there might be video calls. And some of these video calls may connect to more than one person, which was not imaginable earlier. And then you also meet people directly. And in addition to this, some information that comes to you is immediately actionable and pulls you into action. For example, if you got a letter, there was nothing much you could instantly do on the letter. But an email is unlike that. For example, it asks you to click a link. You go there and you read something and then you take an action on it. It is immediately possible. So the kind of information that flows into from various digital devices is enormous. And please, friends, please note, we know subconsciously, or if you calculate, you would know, there is no way, no single individual can assimilate this information. There is nobody in the world who can make a sense of what is going on in all the television channels. There is nobody who can make sense of what is going on in the Facebook or the Instagram. And that is precisely why the politicians are now employing big data analytics softwares for social media listening, because no human can listen and understand. Because there is so much of information. The kind of think of movies to watch. This is lockdown period. Many of you might be watching movies. Your problem is not getting a movie to watch, but really deciding which movie to watch, because there are so many of them. I've been watching the old Malayalam movies. Some which I saw during my young days. All of them, even some of them which I couldn't watch in my younger days, it is all available on the YouTube. And you have a very big problem deciding which one to watch. Hundreds of movies. If you take a local language itself, hundreds of movies. Not to speak of world cinema. So go to the Facebook, I have 5,000 friends. I don't think on any particular year, I can really go and take single look at each of their walls. It is not possible. So people are bogged down by information. And they realize that there is so much of information coming to you, which you cannot assimilate. It gives you a sense of defeat. From beginning itself, you are defeated in managing this information. And this actually affects the quality of your thoughts, because you know that you can never be comprehensive. You can never be on top of the information. You can never be on top of media. And therefore, always your information is going to be partial. Now look at, so this is an influence on you mentally. Then look at the idea of fake news. Earlier, the information that came to you, either through the newspaper or through the books, they were all edited and sent to you. There was a large system to look at the information. So more or less with great amount of confidence, you could take the information as true, even though in the olden times also there could have been fake news. But the possibilities were much, much lesser. In print media, it was very unlikely that you could have fake news, nor could you have hate speech. In the print media, it was very difficult to do hate speech because you would be booked. But in social media, from sitting in some other country, you can, or with a false ID, you can try to make hate speech. So the information that is available to you is not trustworthy. Again, your confidence in the information goes down. You have a lot of information, but you have no idea which one to trust. And the awareness about the fake news has increased. So altogether, I would say that because of the multiplicity of information and the lack of credibility of this multiplicity of information, we are in a very different situation from what it should have been when information revolution began. What we were promised, that information at fingertips. Now what is happening is information is all over you, over your head. And that information is, the responsibility of verifying the information has come back to you. Very different from the earlier days. The responsibility for the information is back to you. I'm reminded of this story about Wikipedia. One famous actor was in deathbed, and it was expected that he might expire soon. Somebody went to the Wikipedia page and wrote added a line saying that about his personality, saying that one of his famous work is the matchbox and fire. And in another 2 days, the person passes away, and even big world famous channels start airing the information that this person was a famous literary figure and one of his famous work was the matchbox and fire. And a person did it for a test purpose, and it was found that it is so easy that you could have a fake news that go around all around the world. I don't need to tell you, we might all have experienced fake news in your own ways. So we have in this information age, we surprisingly seem to have a sense of failure in handling information and a sense of distrust with information. These are going to live with us for a long time. We do not know how this will be overcome. Now, let me come to the issue of instantaneous messaging. Our mobile phones are not phones, as you know. They can do a large number of things. Making a phone call is only one of them. Today, my observation is that some of you may be surprised to know that I don't use a mobile phone. And therefore, I'm able to watch what happens in the world when people use mobile phones. I'm able to make my own observations. I really do not know how long I can pull on like this, because I will also share with you what my problems are in not having a mobile phone. The life is very complicated. Anyway, I will come back to that if somebody asks me a question on that. Now, with the instantaneous messaging, what has happened is we have been conditioned into reassuring each other about our movements, about our well-being in a constantly continuous mode. What more do I tell you than telling about my own experience? 35 years ago, I went to study in Bombay IIT. I went by train. I was put into the train, and my whole family and some of the neighbors all came to send me off. And why? Because, you know, after I traveled to Bombay, I went to the IIT, got a guest room, and then the next day appeared for interview, then got a room allotted, then went to a post office and sent a telegram to my mother saying reached safely. That was the old style telegram. Immediate information was sent. And the telegram reached Trivandrum from Bombay in 2 days. So altogether, after I left to Trivandrum, on the 5th day, my mother knows that I've reached safely. Now I ask you, can any one of you afford that your well-being is communicated after 5 days? Now, this is not to speak of olden times when people took a ship from Cochin to London, and they know after 3 months that they have reached there safely. There was a time like that also. But today, a person who enters the train keeps on talking with his own, kith and kin continuously, saying that I'm here, I had food, I slept, everything is fine. Now, have you noticed that the people who are using these mobile phones, instead of that giving them peace of mind, it sometimes really stresses them when they cannot reach somebody on the mobile. A lot of people get very, very stressed that the mobile call is not being picked up. They immediately feel that they suspect something is wrong. Something bad has happened. Something untoward has happened. So this particular feeling has come because you have been conditioned to be reassured every now and then that everything is fine. Everything is fine. So I asked myself, how did my mother survive for 5 days? Was she thinking that all the 5 days that something bad happened to me? But I've talked to her, and I realized people of that generation had this great ability, the great ability to hope for good. In Sanskrit, we call it pratyasha. Pratyasha is something that you need to lead a good life. A feeling that everything is going to be fine, everything is going to be good, everything is going to be positive, even though sometimes it is not so. But the hope for that is called Pratyasha. So what has the mobile devices done to you? I would say it has killed your Pratyasha. Now my talk is not on really the issues, but I said on the tips. I feel very emboldened to give you this tip that you must practice a day off from mobile phone, or a day or a period off from such reassuring instantaneous communication with your partner or with your best friend, and try to test that your Pratyasha is still in place. It will be a very difficult game. But until you do this, you will be addicted to, or you'll be conditioned to, not addicted, conditioned to being reassured about positive things continuously, that the moment you miss it, you will have a problem. So please think over this. And another effect, mental effect of the instantaneous messaging is that, people have knee-jerk messaging. I see something, I take a photograph, I immediately want to WhatsApp it, or I immediately want to put it on Facebook. And when I want to speak to someone, I immediately want to do it. So what is going to happen is that everybody acts like this. You are required to check your mobile phone. And it will be very interesting for some of you to try to analyze your own patterns of mobile phone checking. And you will find that this continuously tries to interrupt you. If that is the word you will accept, I would say it continuously interrupts you. Now, when that happens, your another ability is compromised. I would say our young generation is very good at being interrupted and still continuing to work. You have a lot of messages that come, you occasionally look at your mobile phone and then keep on working on whatever you are doing. I am very surprised. Sometimes my daughter is sitting in front of the television. She has the mobile phone on, earphone on. She is listening to some music. She is also sending some messages. She is also watching the television. Multitasking is on the rise. I don't look down upon it. It's a very great trick to do that. But at the same time, if you are continuously accustomed to it, the opposite ability, the ability to concentrate, the ability to assimilate huge chunks of time, that is compromised. And for example, an ability to sit and read a book and immerse in it completely, that is lost. But our television actually prevents that, isn't it? You have a very touching movie that you are watching, but after 10 minutes, you are broken off from the reality, and you have some advertisements, which really throw you off that stream of thought. And then again, you switch back. So that experience is not experience good as far as assimilating big chunks of information is concerned, or maintaining your concentration is concerned. So the solutions are very simple. The solutions are to keep away from your mobile instantaneous messaging for fixed periods, like these cars coming out in odd and even hours. You can do that with the mobile phone also. Odd and even hours, you don't message, or you don't look at messages. Now, you might always ask, what if there is something urgent? What if there is an emergency? Now, this is related to that earlier question of Pratyasha. People also ask me, when I don't have a mobile phone, they ask me, what happens if there is an emergency? Well, my answer is, if it is a very great emergency, there is no good in having a mobile phone with you. Number two, I don't go out every day thinking that there is going to be an emergency. I go out with great hope that everything will be fine today and everything will be happy today. So this notion will affect your life. If you don't look into it, it will affect your life. Does your life go forward thinking that every day is an emergency? There could be an emergency, or does your life go forward thinking that every day is going to be a very beautiful day? That is the difference. So to make sure that your power for concentration is not compromised, you must practice odd even hours of receiving and sending messages. if you're, see, there is a rule called the 90-10 rule. 90% of the time, those who message you are 10% of your contacts. Not all the contacts are continuously messaging you. So if you identify that 10% of your contacts, some of which can be guests, your partner, your closest friends, if you talk to them and you share these concerns and also make them also aware of these concerns and agree between you that, okay, we will not message during such and such hours. We will not message on such and such occasions. So that will reduce the effect of this instantaneous messaging on your ability to assimilate. This is yet another example that I would like to give. See, there are people who do much more drastic things. For example, during the times of emails, which possibly you can do on the WhatsApp groups also. I have heard that one person suggested you declare yourself as an email pauper. Pauper means, the penniless, moneyless person. Email pauper, if you want to become an email pauper, is very easy. You go to your Gmail inbox, you select all your mails and delete. And then delete all your contact address. Now I am assuming that this is not an official email ID, in which you don't have the authority, but on your personal email ID. Can you do this? Now, to be very frank, my answer is I am unable to do this. But there are people who have tried this. They call it digital detoxification. So you are a heavy load of work related to that email, and you are thought that it has to be preserved, it has to be, your whole life is entangled there. With one delete, it will go away. And you will find that nothing really will happen. Even though I said I'm not faithful in saying so, because I am myself unable to do this. Sometimes when your hard disk crashes, you think the whole world is gone. But nothing would really happen. That I can tell you from my own experience. I'm a person over years who have had my floppy disk, my pen drives, my hard disk, my external hard disk crashed. Nothing has happened. I don't even remember what was lost looking back. So, in short, I would say these digital devices, your entanglement with those digital devices will bring behavioral changes in you, and you must try to address them with some very simple techniques that I have already indicated. Now, let me come to some physical issues. I can speak on some more mental issues as you raise your questions. Let me come to physical issues. Now, on physical issues, the first thing that I would like to tell you is that, during the time of televisions, we were told you must keep away from the television. You must not look very close. You must not sit very close to the television and watch it. There are 2-3 reasons for it. Some of those reasons are irrelevant today. But anyway, what I would like to point out is that with the digital devices, we look at it very closely. There is no way that it can be in another way. For example, you cannot keep the mobile phone 1 meter away and read it. It has to be close by. So this arrangement has implications on your eyes. Friends, if you look at the whole human body, the human body is made to be healthy, provided it is given variety of movements. So that is why if you sit in a chair for a very long time, when you get up, you want to stretch yourself. Because your body is really asking you to stretch, because it wants variety of movements. Only then it can keep itself in good condition. Now please note that your eyes have got some muscles inside. And these muscles also require to stretch. So if you are looking at a mobile phone for a very long time, what is happening is that the camera in your eyes is focusing at a fixed distance, which is very unnatural. It is looking at the mobile phone, which is about a few centimeters away from your face, and that distance is fixed. But look at a student sitting in a village school, in a classroom. That student looks at the teacher, the blackboard, and the student is able to see the teacher and the blackboard. And then through the window, the student looks outside, it can see treetops, and it looks up, it can see over the treetops, it can see the sky and the horizon. I'm thinking of a college in Trivandrum where when the lecture is very boring, if you look out, it is very, very interesting because you can see the horizon and you can see green treetops. Now, there is something special that happens in that school. The eye muscle, when you look at the blackboard is, let us say, 4 meters away. The eye muscle, the eye camera is sets itself at a fixed distance, at a fixed focus. And when you turn your face and look at far away, suddenly the eye camera will either open or close depending on the light. So the eye muscles move. Very simple thing. But if you keep watching on the mobile continuously, the eye muscles may not get that exercise. Now, I agree that on the mobile, there will be intensity differences when the eye muscle will move. But you will not get the effect that you will get if you look at horizon, if you look at a far away distance. So, friends, my quick suggestion to you is that when you are looking at the mobile, in between, you must train yourself to in between raise your head and look out through the window and look far away. Look to far away places. And please also note that looking at the mobile phone intensely will also produce another problem with your eye, that this intense look will gradually reduce your innate ability to close your eyelids very frequently. There is a rate at which the eyelids close. When eyelids close, actually it is like a wiper. It is actually, there is a fluid inside, and that fluid is being coated over the eye lens when you close eyelids. So when you look intensely, you gradually start getting a reduction of the speed of the eyelid. So if you are alert to this and aware of this, then you can actually try to pull back a little bit. So when eyelids, the closing of the eyelids is reduced, eye becomes dry. I think many IT professionals know this. They use some medication. For example, in Kerala, you have the Elanir Kulam, very good for your eyes. കണ്ണിൽ ഒഴിച്ചിട്ട് കിടന്നാൽ നമുക്ക് നല്ല സുഖം കിട്ടും. അപ്പൊ കണ്ണ് ഒരുപാട് നേരം കമ്പ്യൂട്ടർ നോക്കിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ആ സമയത്ത് നമുക്ക് we can have a medication which will make your eyes water, and that is possible. So giving the eye muscle an exercise is a very important thing as far as your health is concerned. Now on your neck, very young people, they may not all be facing this, but if you are middle-aged, people who are young may not experience, but I would like to tell them, if you don't take care now, at a later stage, you will understand that you have done a lot of mistakes. Your your neck, your back, and your legs. All of this, if you sit in a wrong posture on the computer, they all start troubling you. Now, I have our parents, when we were young, constantly tell us, sit erect and, in good posture. Now, young people don't understand, because even if they sit in a wrong posture, nothing happens. There is no pain and there is no inconvenience, and you find that is more joyful or lazy to sit like that. But if you force people to make it a habit, then the benefit of it will be obtained for the whole lifetime. But now I tell you, if you are already into an issue with your back, then my suggestion is very simple. You must have a wooden plank with you, a small wooden plank, of the size like this book, for example, something like this, small notebook, but made of wood, hard wood, not something that will be flexible. When you sit in a chair, now believe me, whatever be this chair, it says it is ergonomic, this, that, and all. You try this. This is what I have tried for years to manage my backache. Have a small pillow, very good pillow, hard pillow, and a small piece of wooden plank, and put that pillow at the bottom of the chair on the backrest, and on top of the pillow you put that wooden plank, and then you sit such that your back is supported by this wooden plank. It is very hard, and initially you might find that this is uncomfortable, but I assure you, if you practice this, your back would be straight, and even if you have backache, sitting will not cause the trouble. You can do this in your computer chair. You can also do this in your chair in the car, where your sitting may not be very comfortable. So both of these I suggest you. Then another thing is that I already said about repetitive strain injury and numbness in fingers. These actually have very easy solutions. You get breaks in when you sit in front of the computer. A video is loading, or you just want to stretch your hand. During those times, if you are purposeful, if you practice certain things, it will be good for you. One is, for the fingers, when you are typing or when you are constantly, swiping on the mobile phone, the kind of movements that your hand gets is not of good wide variety, and plus it is one part of the finger that continuously is into the movement. The rest of the finger does not get enough movement, and it does not get good blood flow. So for that, you must always keep a pencil. I don't have a pencil with me now. I'll show you the pen. This pencil with hexagonal cross section, I think the Nadaraj pencil that you are all familiar with. You take that, keep it in your hand, and do like this. So because it has got 6 sharp edges, it gives good blood circulation in your fingers. You do like this. Very simple thing to do that. Then you can also, for the whole eye muscle, for the hand muscles, what you can do is, there are soft balls which you can buy. Then a rubber ball would be okay. You keep it near the table. When there is some delay, or you take a purposeful break, what you do is you take the ball and then you try to press it. Then the muscles in the whole hand will get some movement. And you please decide how comfortably you are placed as far as the mouse is concerned, if you are using a mouse. Because if the user the typing and the mouse, what happens is the muscles here, there is a bond which is called a carpal bond, and through that some muscles are going into your hand. And when you have repetitive strain injury here, what happens is that muscle will swell. When it swells, it is inside a bond, a ring. It will pain terribly. Actually, if you get it is called RSI. If you get that, or CTS, carpal tunnel syndrome, when you get that, the first thing is to not work anymore until that swelling goes down and you're better. So you need to know that this is a place where that issue can come. We are luckily today, we have many technologies which will prevent you from continuously typing or clicking, because you have softwares which can understand your speech. We must use them very much and do only the necessary editing on what message that you type. Audio messages should be used more frequently, I would say. But then these create other issues. Let us not go into it at the moment. But then physically, your movements, and then in the legs, what you have to do is, if you travel in flights, some of you must have noticed some of the booklets there tell you how to do an exercise sitting in a chair. Sitting in the chair itself, you can do an exercise. For example, on your hand, you can just sit. You're waiting for a video to download. You could actually, turn your wrist like this, and you can do it maximum. So with the legs also, you can sit and do some exercise with the leg, and massage one leg with the other sitting. These are things you can do. And with the fingers, I think people who do yoga, if you ask them, they will tell you so many things you can do with your with your hand, that's good for your well-being. For example, pressing here, this will wake up the nerves, and pressing the fingertips. All of such exercises, we need to make it a habit. There is no way that somebody will come and remind you every day. This has to be a habit. So these all will generally improve our health in using the digital device. I would also like to tell you some things which are good news. For example, the computer screens in the past spraying electrons towards the people sitting in front of it, the old big CRT screens. But our new technologies, I understand, are not working in the same mode and does not do that much of radiation, does not have that much of radiation hazard. So that is a good thing. Another one with mobiles is that we know that mobiles have another issue, that they produce the radiation. They do wireless communication and they have to radiate and they have to receive radiation. Now these radiations, luckily, about 10 years ago, the government of India brought a law to reduce it to 1/10 of what was there in 2000, let us say 2010 or 11. That was when that law came. That means the power has come down very much, 1/10. So it is in a safe limit. I would say its radiations are in safe limit. But like the saying goes, in science and in our traditional knowledge, there is a saying. Some of you might have heard. Adhigamayal amrutam visham. In big quantities, even amrit is a poison. Actually, science also says so. Science says everything is a poison and dose decides it. Everything is a poison. You take sugar, sugar is a poison. If you eat 10 kilos of sugar every day, then it can kill you. If you eat 10 kilograms of salt every day, it can kill you. So dose decides whether something is a poison. It's a very important scientific principle as well as common sense. Common sense. മലയാളം അറിയാവുന്ന ഞാൻ എക്സാമ്പിൾ പറയാം. പുളിഞ്ചിക്ക എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ സാധനം നമ്മൾ അച്ചാറിട്ട് കഴിക്കുന്നു. അത് 10 എണ്ണം അരച്ച് തിന്നാങ്കിൽ അശുദ്ധി. അപ്പോൾ everything has a dose. If that dose is crossed, it is poison. So if you ask me whether mobile phone is bad, I would say no, nothing is bad. The dose decides whether it is bad. So if you are using the mobile phone for hours and hours in stretch, then this small radiation itself, I would say, does not augur well. Keeping the mobile phone close to your body and speaking for 3 hours is not good. This is what I would say. Because of the principle that everything overuse becomes poison. And similarly, the time when you use mobile phone, the background light has to be there. So in the night, if you switch off all lights and then watch mobile phone, then the contrast is very high and the eyes will be strained. That also is not advisable. So on the radiation, this is what I suggest. In the recent time, that scare of the radiation being very bad to you, causing cancer, etc., I think it has almost been made trivial. Almost been trivial. So on those accounts, there is no need to be worried. Yet another suggestion that I would like to make to you is that, on your health tip I would like to make is that, see, spending a large amount of time on digital devices has an invisible effect on us. These times are being taken from other experiences in life. For example, your connectivity to nature gets reduced because you are connected to a machine. You are continuously connected to a machine. And your experiences determine your well-being and your behavior. I will say 2 examples. Your digital experience is very different from real experience. Let us look at a kid, 10-year-old kid, who sits in front of the computer and plays games, continuously uses computers. What is his experience or her experience? there are certain elements of that experience that the kid is using a machine. The machine is not a human being, it has no humanness. Look at this example. A student is typing a poem. After the poem is typed, the student is not happy with it, deletes it. It drags the Word file into the dustbin, the waste bin. And after some time, the student thinks it is okay, it takes it back. Then again, it changes its mind, puts it back. Again, takes it back, puts it back. The computer does not ever ask the kid, are you crazy? Deleting, then taking it back. Deleting, and then taking it back. No computer ever asks that. But a human being would. If you see your friend writing a poem, then throwing it into the waste bin, then taking it back again, putting it again. Or you change your mind continuously. For example, the kid with the mother, he asks the mother, I want a dosha. Mother takes it back. Then he says, no, I changed my mind, bring again. She brings. Then he again says, no, I don't want. Can the child do like this for 10 times to a mother? They cannot. The mother will not react in the same way. But the computer reacts in the same way. So you see that the computer builds an experience based on logic. It's very logical. There is no element of emotion in a computer. There is no element of unpredictability in a computer. And you can, for example, you can stop. When I am talking to my friend, all of a sudden I cannot stop and get up and go away. But on a computer, you can do this. You can shut down the computer all of a sudden and go away. So all these experiences are not good to develop a human being. So if you sit in front of a computer, especially at a young age for a very long time, it will have behavioral consequences on you. And your sense of how the world moves also is very unrealistic. Everything is very, very fast. Over WhatsApp message group, you send your message to 1,000 people. You send a 25 MB thesis to your friend in US in half a second. All this can happen. But in real world, none of this can happen. You cannot communicate to 1,000 people like that. You cannot send a thesis or a book to your friend like that. And everything is fast, fast, fast. And this person, when they are exposed to real life, will find it very, very frustrating. You stand and wait for a bus in a bus stand, and the bus takes 15 minutes to come. The person who is a digital device addict will find it very, very frustrating. But the villager does not find it at all a problem. Wait for a bus for 15 minutes or half an hour, or a person from the previous generation. So that is the effective behavioral change. During the COVID, we are actually forced to take a relook at our behavioral changes. Whether all this speed and all this hurry was really, really necessary. We are given a time to rethink on it. Not that all of it can be avoided. We open, we still have to be fast and we have to be in a hurry. But we at least now have a chance to rethink about it. Friends, I will now open for discussions. Before I do that, I would like to also mention about the gaming, especially for the benefit of those who are parents. I already mentioned that what you do affects your behavior in your formative years, especially. If you are 50-year-old, then it doesn't really matter, because your behavior and your personality is formed, or rather finalized. But a 10-year-old child is actually in the process of fine-tuning his or her behavior and personality. At that stage, what you do really affects the behavior. A child who is playing with games which have got, they are very intensely involved in it, but what is happening when you look at it, the mouse becomes a gun and the child is shooting people. These are not good for either the child or the family or the country or the humanity. This is not what our child should play with. I frankly do not have an answer as to what we can do about it. Now, earlier I mentioned our time taken by digital gadgets are taken away from other times, like talking to people, touching people, going out and being in nature. So I close my lecture with a small suggestion that we can give our brain what is missing in the digital days by a thinking exercise. Every day before you go to sleep, well, one of my strong suggestions to you is 10:30 or 11, you have an agreement with all your friends that you will power down your mobile phone and you will not receive any call until the next day, that is 8 o'clock. Difficult to do, but do it gradually. One way to do that is do it gradually. If you are talking until 1 o'clock, then try to make it 12 first, and then after a week, try to make it 11:30. That is the only way it works. You cannot rock the apple cart. Anyway, so after you switch off your mobile, switch off your computer, and you are about to sleep, what you must do is close your eyes and give your brain all the experience that a villager would get. How to do that is think of nature experiences. For example, think of fragrances. Think of the smell of jasmine flowers, rose flowers. Think of the smell of a cow shed. Think of the smell of sambar. Think of the smell of the fresh newspaper, coffee, tea. Think of all variety of things that you can imagine. Think of the smell of the freshly ironed clothes. And do all that, and then switch to thinking of sounds. Think of the sound of wind, sound of the birds crying. Think of the sound of the sea. Think of the sound of the water from the well. Think of the sound of a river flowing. Think of the sound of a siren. A large number of sounds. Then you can start thinking of touches, sense of touch. Think of how it will be to touch sand. Think of how it would be to touch water in a well. Think of how it would be to touch skin of a animal, skin of a tree. This will in some way compensate for the nature that you missed. Your brain gets signals that normally you get when you think of that smell or the touch also. So the brain gets detoxified from that experience of the digital device, and also it is very good to fall asleep in a very positive frame of mind. So I would request all the friends who are listening to me to try this out. It will make you happy and it will help you to manage your digital devices better. I will now look forward to the questions and discussions. You can also say comments and share your own opinions.
Thank you very much, sir. That was very informative and very personal as well, because I am a person personally who has gone through almost all of the problems you just mentioned, be it carpal tunnel syndrome or backache or even slight issues. So it was very touching and very personal. And thank you very much for your informative talk. I would request K.R. Venugopal sir to please curate the question and answer session if you are there. K.R. Venugopal sir.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am here, but there is no question. Only one hand raise is there. They can just talk the question.
I suggest that they can text the question and someone of you can just.
Yes, sir. I have a question from Renjitar Nair. If it is okay, can I read out the question?
Yeah, you can read out the question. Yeah.
Okay, sir. The question goes like this. Can music help us in clearing our minds from the stress of digital addiction? If yes, what type of music do you recommend?
Okay, good question. See, I cannot recommend music for anyone because music and people, they have an equation with each other. Having said that, there are music which require training to listen. For example, classical music, you require a training to listen. It just cannot be listened just like that, even though some of it can be listened. It might attract you. I would suggest you must listen to music which you like, but then there are certain choices you have to make, that it should be soft, it should not be very agitating music, and perhaps Indian music, you will have a lot of choices in that compared to the Western pop music. But anyway, the recommendation is that what is good music is different for each person. I would not recommend what I like for you. Even though if you are very close friend of mine, I would try to encourage you to listen to some classical music. For example, Hariprasad Chaurasya, one name that comes to my mind, or in Kerala, Kudamalur Janardhan, I would say listening to his music in soft volume, switch off lights and listen to his music softly. It's a great experience for me. Some of you can try, but I believe that people are made for each other as far as music is concerned. Are there other comments or questions?
There is a question from Mr. Alan.
Okay.
There is a mobile tower near to my home within 100 meters. Whether it will cause production of higher radiations while using mobile phones.
Okay. See, I'm not an expert in it, but I've taken time to understand this phenomena. And at the moment, what I can tell you is, it is every kind of electrical device, an electrical device and electronics device will produce some radiations. You must know that Earth itself produces a radiation. There is that's called a background radiation. There is a radiation always there. And you know that in Chavara, place in Kerala, it is considered to be having some radiations which are not there in other places. Very high radiation. You must take this as a non-professional comment. I'm not an expert in that area. But what I'm trying to tell you is that in a tower, the radiation is maximum at its bottom. And as you move away from it, because of the inverse square effect, the strength of the radiation will be reduced. So 100 meters away from your house, to me, even though I cannot, as I said, I'm not a competent person to advise to you, I would think is sufficiently away. And letting a tower being placed on top of your building is something that I would say is not advisable. Now, on the other things, this care that is produced, you must know that when electricity became popular, people said that this is going to cause problems. Maybe it is causing small problems also, we do not know. When we sleep, beside our, inside the wall, there is a wire running and it's carrying some current. It's so close to us. It has a radiation, but that radiation, the frequency is very small. But even though it is very small, it might have some effect. We do not know. So in olden times, there were very scary stories about this. So at this point of time, I think even though it is the radiation effects are there, we have no conclusive evidence that these are of alarming health levels. Except that I strongly believe people who are living in the upper floor of a building, on top of which you are permitted a mobile tower to be placed, are at a small risk. That is my understanding of this.
The next question is from MCM.
Yeah.
Will this session be available in YouTube?
See, okay. This is also another issue that affects my mind. See, if you listen to me just like that, I'm very free to talk. I am uninhibited. My talk will be more enjoyable. The moment you tell me that I am going to be on the YouTube, I have some issues. I have to relook at everything very critically, which is not something I do when I speak Estambo. So I would say I don't want this talk to go on the YouTube. I wouldn't put this on the YouTube. It is a very Estambo talk, slightly unprofessional talk, just to entertain you, and a very informal one. So hopefully I will make this into an article, which I have time to edit and correct and do all those things. But when talking, once the word comes out, you cannot correct. So therefore, I hope I will make an article of that.
No more questions in the chat box. If anybody has a question, they can just speak out.
Yeah, there is one more question I saw.
I have a couple of questions that has come to me.
Yeah.
This is a question from Dr. Santosh Kumar, the chair of IEEE Kochi subsection and the head of the department at Kochi University of Science and Technology, the computer science department. His question goes like this. In my opinion, technology is co-evolving with humans. Does it not augment our cognitive and physical capabilities?
Good question. Actually, I'm reminded of what this chess player Gary Kasparov, he said recently about artificial intelligence. He said with machine intelligence and human intelligence will go hand in hand and produce what he calls as an augmented intelligence. So I agree with your observation. From a health perspective, I have been speaking, but I accept the inevitability of technology, and that human beings are not in their abilities, in their attitudes, in their adaptation, they are not static. They can change. I think that is the implication of your question. I must say I agree to you. And my talk was from a rather very pragmatic viewpoint of what we can do now. But I do think that we will adapt to technology very well. We will surmount some of its issues. And come next generation, they won't even know that they are having information. Only for a person like me who has lived in a non-digital age, I'm able to understand what is an information overload. But for the child who is born into the world of digital devices, 3-year-old kid is playing with the mobile and trying out all its things. For that child is not stressed with information, and the child very naturally adapts to the world of the information technology. So I agree to what you said. Human beings will evolve with technology, and we will find a right balance. And at that point, there will be new technologies come, new issues that also will adapt.
Dr. Santosh has one more question.
Yeah.
Mothers are famous for multitasking. Are there any difference of digital experience usage between genders?
Okay. I haven't actually studied that aspect very well, but I agree to the first observation you have made that mothers are multitaskers. Their behavioral patterns can possibly be different on the digital platform, because not only are they multitaskers. If you look at people who commit crime all over the world, you will find that the number of women in it is minuscule. People who commit corruption, the number of women in it is minuscule. Maybe there are a few, but the percentage is very, very small. Why is it so? Because I think biologically, a mother has a project which is very different from a father. Women have to rear a child. Even though we can say that we live in a world of equality, and the father also has to take care of the child, but we very well know, even though the father can take care of some tasks associated with rearing the child and the mother are their relation is very different from that of the child and the father. The child grew up inside the mother, and it brings the milk of the mother, and this cannot be replaced by the man. And therefore, because of that making, the woman is, in my opinion, the woman is a embodiment of kindness built into her. Sometimes we make very gender insensitive remarks about women drivers. Women drive cars, and we think that some of them get very scared with the possibility of accidents or if some vehicle comes across. Why? Because they are genetically wired to react to any small possibility of a danger, because only then the mother can rear the child. If we leave the child to the father, and the father who is very proud of being a driver, who is not scared of a lorry coming across him, then that would be bad news for the child. So women are have biologically, emotionally, I would say, they have a very different structure. And of course, multitasking is also built into that child rearing thing. They have to live together with the child. 24 hours is shared with the child in the phase of rearing. Emotionally, whole lifetime they share. So therefore, their behavioral patterns on the internet, on the digital platforms, are likely to be different. I will think more into this question. It's an interesting question. I haven't observed. I haven't studied it in great detail. So.
Thank you very much, sir. And Dr. Santosh also thanks you for your wonderful presentation. And probably we should close.
There is one more question from Dr. KG Sadish Kumar.
Okay.
Is it a good idea to resist change? If we don't adapt, aren't we likely to be aged out of and become obsolete? Of course, I agree that we need to go back once in a while to the diversity that we once enjoyed. But we should also embrace change, shouldn't we?
Okay. Good question, but I can only answer it philosophically. What do you mean by obsolete? To whom? For whom? For whom you don't want to be obsolete? Do we need to adapt, keep on adapting, change? For whom? You asked whether it is good. Now the question good itself is very confusing for me. Good for what? Good for whom? Good when? So I would actually try to answer that by saying, it depends on your philosophical outlook of life. Do you want to be abreast of all technologies, not be obsolete? What is the purpose of it? I would say you put this question upside down and ask you, what is it that you want in your life? So if the answer is, well, there could be many answers. If the answer is be happy, then I would say, if with technology you are happy, then please adopt. Please keep on adopting your technologies. If somebody is happy without a technology, for example, if you give me a brand new mobile phone and you give me a choice to go to, in the summer, to go to Pepara and spend time in a rivulet there, I will choose going to the Pepara rivulet. The reason is very simple. There are no arguments. The reason is very simple. It looks to me that I will enjoy that more, make me more happy. But for someone, they think that, no, that is not. I want this mobile phone with these latest features. That will make you happy. I think then you should adapt to change. So this is a personal philosophical question. To me, it is resolved by asking philosophically, why do you live? What is the purpose of your day-to-day life? And one very simple answer for that is to be happy. So what makes you happy? Now, again, the question is, to be happy is, are you talking about the happiness today? For example, you take alcohol, you're very happy today. But then you may not be happy after 5 years when your liver has a problem. So that question itself has to be discussed as to what do you mean by happy? Happy in this moment? Happy, over a period of time? Then for what period of time? For whatever period of time after that, all this has no meaning. There is no point in being abreast of technology after many years, both for me and Sadish Maj. So, these questions are rather philosophical. But I see your point that pragmatically, when you are in a profession, I think we need to be abreast of technology in whatever way your critical mind tells you. But in personal life, you shouldn't put on you a unquestioned demand like being abreast, being evolving with technology. To you don't need a certificate from anyone in your personal life that you are using technology, but you need your own certificate that you are happy. So what makes you happy? That is the point. That is based on which you take all your decisions.
One more from Mr. Babu K.
Yeah.
Recently, I read an article and the headline is "Death is optional and aging is curable." Can you comment on this?
Okay. See, this is a notion that has started to come up in the last 20 years because of developments in biotechnology and developments in computing. And as somebody mentioned in a question, in augmented humanity, there is some technology that has started entering our body for quite some time. The heart valve, for example. And soon we might have chips embedded into our body. In addition to all this, the aging process, in the chromosomes, there is a part called telomere. It has been identified that that is the part which kicks off the aging process, and they might succeed in making a change there. But please note that there is an illusion that if we enhance the period of life, something better will happen. See, right now, just assume that our body is capable of living for 1,000 years. Then we find that we have a miserable life. We can only live for 70, 80 years. So if you make it 200, you are still not happy because you have to go to 1,000. So whatever period of life you have, towards the end of the period of life, you have a problem. You have a problem that your life is going to wind. In fact, this question, if you recall, in our old school text, we had a poem called Kalan Illatha Kalan. Now, if you reduce the aging process, if you reverse the aging process, please note that your body is not just a biological machine. There is something which biology still cannot explain. Your mind, or what the religious people might call your soul. As a scientist, I cannot say that there is a soul, but I can tell you that if you take all the atoms of my body and put them together in another place, I will not be alive and I will not be thinking alive. Physically, I am equivalent. So it is like saying a Hitler is, if you get a cell of Hitler's hair, you can clone Hitler. But then this new baby, Hitler is born as a baby. He is born in India and he is brought up in Gandhi ashram. Then he may not be a bad person at all. Or if Gandhi, when he was born, he was taken to a Chinese concentration camp, he may not come up like the Mahatma Gandhi that we know of. So the point that I am trying to make is, even when aging process is reversed, you might find that a person is young, physically young, but mentally old. This might happen because we still have no clue to how life exists inside a biological machinery. The biological machinery is being understood more and more, but the other aspect is still not within our hand. So scientifically, I would say I will not be surprised that if aging process is reversed in many ways. For example, your skin, there won't be wrinkles and your hair won't be gray, and your machine design inside, they will try to remain as good as they are. I will tell you an analogy. Human beings are designed to self-destruct, and the internal machines are all designed with a particular warranty or guarantee period. And you are going to reverse it. How do you think it can survive? It is designed so. And if it is not self-destructing, that itself could be a disease of the mind, if machines don't self-destruct. And think of our modern technology. For example, look at cars. Our technology has improved. Newer models of cars and phones are all there. But have you noticed, in olden days, an ambassador car people used to own for 25 years. But can you locate a person who owns a car for 25 years now? You don't. Why? Because the industry, if science and technology has to thrive, what it produces has to sell, and if it has to sell, it has to die. Cars have to die faster. That is why many countries say after 15 years you cannot drive the car. In America, you cannot drive the car; they will take it to a place and crush it. In India, also after 15 years, you have to now get a special checkup and a license if you want to bring out your car again. I have a car which is more than 15 years old, Maruti car, which is very rare. So why is it happening? It is happening because the economy of the world requires it. So think of the economy of nature. The economy of nature also requires you to die. Whether it is at 90, whether it is at 100, may not be an issue. But if you think you can live forever, I think that doesn't suit the economy model of nature. And personally, as I'm not talking about as a scientist, personally, I think it will not happen.
Next is not a question, it's a comment from Dr. Bijuna Kunyu.
Okay.
Great listening to Achit Sankar sir. Every time he talks about society and technology.
Thank you, Dr. Bijna. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. He's from TKM Engineering College, professor at TKM.
Yeah. Yes, that's all.
Oh, thank you very much. I thank all the participants for listening to me. I enjoyed during this lockdown period to connect to all of you. And thank you, Computer Society of India, and all the other organizations IEEE, all other institutional engineers, all of them who gave me the platform to talk to you. Thank you very much. Have a good lockdown day, and hope that we are able to bounce back to normal life soon, but with better lessons of how to make life more joyful and more meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We are moving on to the end of today's talk, and so we have already overshot our session by 32 minutes, and we still have around 90% of our participants on the call. So that clearly shows how interesting and how personal every participant has taken your advice and listened through your talk. So thank you very much, sir, for that wonderful and inspiring session. And as I said earlier, this was a talk which touched me very close because of most of the conditions that I have. I really had one question, but because of the paucity of time, I'm not sure if you still have time to take that. Well, the question would be like, how do you manage in this digital era to walk around without a mobile phone? Because I have been trying to stay away from computing devices because of my, tendinitis and carpal tunnel syndrome, but I failed. In 3 days, I failed. How do you still manage to walk around without a mobile phone? Probably when we have time, or even over email, I can ask you, get advice from you on how to manage. Thank you very much, sir, for spending your time with us today. And I also thank the Institution of Engineers, the Society of India, the Project Management Institute, the PMI, and IEEE, and the Internet Society for arranging such a wonderful session, such an informative session, which I'm sure almost all participants have enjoyed thoroughly. Thank you once again, sir, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let us call this a day.
Thank you. Thank you.